Hi everybody, thank you for joining me. Today I'm doing what's become a little bit of a tradition for me now, doing my prediction of what I think we're going to be getting released this year from the Beatles and from all 4 solo members. Now, a year ago when I did this, I came up with my prediction, and to be honest, I was quite pleased with how I did. There was one prediction in particular that I got right, which was that I didn't think that it would be a year for a big Paul McCartney archive collection release. We'll see later on whether I think that's the same for this year. And I just wonder whether this might not be the right year to release London Town and Back to the Egg archive collections. Last year I didn't think was too difficult to predict. It kind of mapped itself out really. We knew that we were going to be getting a big Plastic Ono band set from the John Lennon camp. We knew that All Things Must Pass would come from George's camp. And we knew that the big thing on the horizon was the Beatles' Get Back Peter Jackson movie. My goodness, what an event that was. This year I think it's a little bit more difficult to predict. It's certainly more difficult than last year. I want to know what you think about these predictions. Let me know down in the comments either what you're hoping for the most or what you think we might get during this year. So I'm going to start off with what might be the 2 easier ones to predict, and that's George and Ringo. So for Ringo, last year we got a couple of EPs. Ringo himself has said that he's probably done with making full albums now, and EPs are the way to go. It's very difficult to predict whether we might get some of those this year. I think we probably will, but we're just going to have to wait and see on that one. And for George, well, obviously we've got the big All Things Must Pass box set. Traditionally speaking, releases from the Harrison camp are very, very slow to come through. Now, I'm not expecting anything from the George Harrison camp this year. I would love it if they absolutely prove me wrong. I think we may well be getting a big Living in the Material World set next year, I hope anyway. The big thing that we might get is, would we get something for the concert for Bangladesh, which has just had its 50th anniversary. Now, this is open to speculation. Let me know what you think in the comments. Personally, I kind of doubt it now. I suspect these things are difficult when they involve multiple artists. I will talk more about some difficulties that's caused with Paul McCartney later on. But from the George Harrison camp, the concert for Bangladesh, getting agreement from all of those involved is a difficult thing. If I was betting, I would say we're probably not going to get anything major, but I really hope they prove me wrong. It would be a shame if they didn't do anything this year to capitalise on having the big All Things Must Pass box set last year, because that surely must have reignited some people's interest in George and maybe even brought some new fans altogether in. And it would be a shame if they let that slide. So could this year be a good year for Early Takes Volume 2, for example? Pure speculation on my part there. I doubt it will happen, but I think it would be a really good time if they were planning a Volume 2 to do that this year. But if I was betting, I'd say no release from the George camp this year. Moving on to John Lennon. Will we get a big release from the John Lennon camp this year, which we have had in each of the last few years? Probably yes. I think it was kind of confirmed on John Lennon's social media last year when the Plastic Ono band set came out, and somebody asked in the comments, are we going to be getting a Sometime in New York City box set next year? And the official John Lennon account replied with a thumbs up. So that suggests that that's maybe on the card. That will be an interesting one, because obviously we've had Imagine, we've had Plastic Ono Band, and we've had a big sort of solo years encompassing Gimme Some Truth box set. And they're all obviously big hitters. Sometime in New York City, that's another matter. It was not an album that sold particularly well at the time. It's not an album that was critically well received. So I think it will be interesting to see whether they take any kind of a different approach with this release to make it sell to a wide audience. Now, the album originally came out in the 12th of June 1972. Now this year, the 12th of June happens to be a Sunday. The following Sunday, 19th, is Father's Day in both America and the United Kingdom. So, in theory, it could be a really good time to capitalise on that and get the album out in time for Father's Day. So, if I was betting, again, this is just pure speculation on my part, I think potentially Friday, with that being the release day these days, Friday, June the 10th, could be a good bet for a Sometime in New York City box set. So I would certainly love to see that. That would be really interesting. I've gone on record before as saying that I find, despite how political that album is, I find there's a lot of fun in that album. It might not strike you as like an obvious fun album, but something like Yoko's We're All Water is just, I find it really fun to listen to. The rest of it, I do enjoy the album, and I think that it will certainly be interesting to hear a new remix of it, because there was a tendency in those sort of early to mid 70s with John and with some of the George Harrison albums as well, that some of the mixes were often a little bit muddy, and I think Sometime in New York City is one of those that did suffer a little bit from that. So I think a remix could be really interesting. I think there's a lot of kind of funkiness in the sort of the New York grooves that he was getting on tape at the time, and that could be maybe brought out with a remix. So that would be really interesting. The other things that I would like to see, again, because they need to sell this to a wide audience. Imagine and Plastic Ono Band, to an extent, sell themselves quite well. This is a more difficult sell. I would like to see some video content on these. Now, the live album that came with Sometime in New York City is based on concerts from two particular dates. There was a 1969 UNICEF concert in London that featured George Harrison, Eric Clapton, Nicky Hopkins and various other people. Some of the music was taken from that. There is video footage that exists of that. It's a bit rough. There's some on YouTube. So maybe if it was professionally recorded, it would be great to see some of that. The other section of the live album that's on there came from 1972 from the Fillmore East in New York, and that was with Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention. Again, there is reasonably extensive video footage out there. How much that can be cleaned up, or whether there's some more sort of official footage that could be really cleaned up, if that could be included, that really could help it to sell. So that would be really interesting to see. So I expect that to be the big release from the John Lennon camp this year, is a box set of Sometime in New York City. On to Paul McCartney. So it's no surprise to anybody that if any of the four Beatle camps are going to be putting out multiple releases this year, it's going to be the Paul McCartney camp. We've already got one confirmed release, and that's for February the 4th. And that is a half-speed vinyl remaster of Wings Wildlife, to follow on from the McCartney and Ram half-speed remasters we've had over the last couple of years. I've got my order in for that. I'm looking forward to receiving that and seeing if they can manage to get some more sort of high-quality sound from that vinyl like they did on the other two releases. I listened to my Wings Wildlife archive collection version just a few weeks ago, and it sounded fantastic, so I'd be really keen to see whether they've been able to tease any more improvements out with the half-speed remaster. So that's on February the 4th. There's one non-musical thing that might happen with McCartney this year that I'm really interested to see, and that's the Wings Over Europe 1972 tour bus. Now, it's the 50th anniversary this year of the Wings Over Europe concerts, and some of you may well have been following the story, but the bus, that brightly coloured bus that they toured Europe in during that summer of July and August 1972, years ago it was abandoned. It was found in Tenerife near a holiday resort, and it was brought back to the UK. It spent its last sort of year or so, it has been at a bodywork shop near Clacton down in the south of England, being restored. Now, that must be costing time and money. I'm certain that the Paul McCartney camp know all about this, because they did put feelers out a couple of years ago about, does anybody know what's happening with the bus? And they got plenty of replies telling them what's happening. So they know about this. Whether they're officially involved, I don't know, but I would love to see at some point over the summer of this year the Wings tour bus, the actual one, WNO 481, restored and been put to some sort of good use for the public to go and see, for fans to go and see. So that's a little non-musical tidbit that might happen this year. I'd be really interested to see that. The other big question with McCartney this year is, are we going to get any more archive releases? Now, as I said right at the beginning, I went on record a year ago saying that I didn't think that 2021 was going to be the right year for a big archive collection, and that was purely from from the McCartney camp, as a business point of view, if they knew that there was a Let It Be box coming, there was the Get Back movie, that there was Plastic Ono Band, All Things Must Pass, there was a lot of things competing for Beatles fans' cash last year, and the McCartney team might have wanted a bit of a clearer year to be able to sell their big product. And I think this year might be that year. So whereas I said last year I didn't think we were going to get an archive release, I am making no such promise this year. I think I would be very surprised if we don't get something this year. The big question then is what? Now, the London Town and Back to the Egg are the two that most fans, if you were to sort of put it to the vote, would say that's what they want next. Now, I mentioned earlier on with the with George and the concert for Bangladesh that there's often difficulties with rights in terms of when you've got things that involve multiple artists, getting the rights to release things can be very difficult. And it's kind of a well-known secret online that an issue that stopped Back to the Egg release recently has been to do with, there's been a court case that's, we don't know the exact details, but it would appear it's probably something to do with Rockestra and all those different musicians that are on there and getting the authority to release it, probably in terms of a live version. And it looks as though there's been some sort of legal snags in getting that released. Now, we also don't know whether those legal snags have been overcome yet. If they have, then probably this year I would expect that we will get London Town and Back to the Egg. Probably as a box set similar to, let's pull this out of here, the Wings 71 to 73 box set, the magnificent box that we got with Red Rose Speedway, Wildlife and the Wings Over Europe exclusive set. Hopefully we can get something similar as like a kind of probably like a 77 to 79 box set, and they would no doubt include Mull of Kintyre in there because although it was never a big hit in many countries including the US, it is still the biggest selling non-charity single in UK chart history, outselling everything by the Beatles even. And I'd be astonished if they didn't play on that in a box set that covers the kind of London Town Back to the Egg period. So I think if those legal problems have been cleared, I think we get that this year. Let's find out whether I'm right or not. If they haven't been cleared, then it's going to be probably either, let's assume, press to play or off the ground potentially would seem the likely two. Personally, I would absolutely love a press to play archive collection. That would be fantastic. But it does kind of feel as though the time's right now for London Town and Back to the Egg. So I'm kind of predicting that that's what we're going to get this year. There's a lot of fans saying that they want a standalone release of Wings Over Europe because people who missed out on this box set, and I fully understand why people are saying that. And I think at some point in the future it will come. I don't think that will come yet. I've said it before, I think that from a business point of view, from MPL point of view, McCartney's company, I don't see it making sense to release that as a business decision, because it might take away some of the demand for a London Town and Back to the Egg box set that might have a similar live portion in it. If people know, well, we can wait and we can buy it standalone when it comes out anyway. So I think they need to keep it as a very standalone. They need to keep it purely as part of this box set for now. But maybe when London Town and Back to the Egg have come out, maybe we'll get a Wings Over Europe standalone set. But I would be surprised if that happened now. The other thing that's not happened since July 2019, so in summer it'll be 3 years since the last of the McCartney vinyl reissues campaign. Although of course we've had the Half Speed remasters. So we were getting some really nice releases in that, and it was a way of them getting albums back into the market. Maybe if stocks were running low, they could do this vinyl reissue and get more stocks out there. And certain things like the Amoeba gig, actually just getting them for the first time was fantastic. So I really hope that we get kind of a two-pronged McCartney attack this year, where in part of the year we get an archive release or two, and in the other part of the year we get some vinyl reissues. There's all sorts of directions that they could go in still with that vinyl reissue campaign. Things that are maybe less likely to get an archive collection of their own at the moment, so maybe Driving Rain, Memory Almost Full, for example. They could do some live albums. They could go down the route of Fireman albums and Twin Freaks. That would be fantastic. I would love it if they did that. So for McCartney, my prediction is that probably I see a space potentially around about maybe April, May. It keeps it clear of the Wings Wildlife Half-Speed remaster, and it keeps it clear of a probable Lennon box in June. So I wouldn't be surprised if we get some kind of big McCartney release in about April or May this year. I also wouldn't be surprised if we get something else towards the back end of the year. So whichever one of those two, if we get it early, maybe we could get the other towards the back end of the year. Maybe around about November, potentially. That would be awesome. Another thing to bear in mind, it's Paul's 80th birthday on June 18th this year. Will we get something special for that? Now, it's rumoured that he might be headlining Glastonbury like he was supposed to do in 2020 before it was cancelled. There are rumours that that's happening this year instead. We will see, but there may well be lots of at least publicity around June this year for his birthday. Another couple of projects that might come for McCartney, which we've been waiting for them for ages, is the High in the Clouds animation, which we know Netflix have bought. It's been made for several years now. At some point it's going to come, so keep an eye out on Netflix. Potentially, if that gets ready, that could come. The other one that I think is less likely, just because of what's happened with COVID and how it's hit the theatre industry. We know that Paul was working on the soundtrack for a musical of a brand new musical of It's a Wonderful Life, the old Christmas classic movie. But with what's happened with the theatre industry, I think all bets are off with that at the moment as to what's happening. I'm sure people who are involved in it know, but we don't know whether that's likely to come. So I think for McCartney, let's think about those possible 2 release periods of around April, May, and then potentially around about November for some big McCartney releases this year. And then that just leaves the Beatles themselves. What might we get in 2022 from the Beatles? This is a really tough one because kind of since the moment back in 2017 when it was announced that we were getting a big Sgt. Pepper's 50th anniversary box set, we'd kind of been able to map out the next few years. We knew that we were getting that. That kind of meant that we kind of knew we'd get the White Album. Then we knew we'd get Abbey Road. Let It Be, although it was delayed a year because of COVID and because of the delay that meant to the Peter Jackson movie, we kind of knew it was coming. We are now in much more uncharted territory. What on earth is going to happen next? Well, first of all, I think that let's not forget that we are waiting for a Get Back home release, Blu-ray, DVD, and that really depends on what deal the Beatles Apple company struck with Disney. We know that Disney have got some sort of period of exclusivity where that's the only place where it can be seen. We don't know how long that is. We don't know whether it's 3 months, 6 months, a year. It kind of makes sense that it would be at least 3 months. That would take us to sort of the back end of February. Now, you might well then find that after that point, once their exclusivity has ended, we may well get an announcement on a Beatles Get Back home release. And then there's the big questions. Will there be extra material? Peter Jackson sort of talked about the fact that he wanted a sort of a mega 18-hour long version, but that he felt that there wasn't kind of a market for that nowadays. I'm sure there is a market for it with Beatles fans, how obsessive we all are. So I think there will be some kind of extras on there. I would love it to include there was a theatrical version where there were various premieres across the world. UK and US were the two sort of most high profile ones, where they were shown a 100-minute version of the movie, which I believe consisted mainly of the rooftop concert, but plus a lot of Peter Jackson talking about how he made the movie and how he made certain decisions he made. I would love that to be included. I would love there to be lots of Peter Jackson involvement in this, telling us about what he did. I would also love to see on this, as much as I loved what Peter Jackson did with the rooftop concert in terms of making it into a great story, the Beatles versus the police, as in the police enforcers, not police the band. I would love to see an option on the Blu-ray or DVD where you can just watch the concert without that, as an alternative. I did really enjoy what he did with that story, It made it really fun to watch, but I would like to see an alternative of just having that rooftop concert. So we may well get, will we get a standalone rooftop concert album? Personally, I'm not so sure that we will. After having now seen the entire rooftop concert, I'm not sure that an audio version makes sense after seeing the whole thing. So I don't know whether we'll get that or not, but certainly I would hope to see a home release for the Beatles Get Back sometime early in the new, sometime sort of spring, early summer. Hopefully that would be great. Plus as well, let's not forget that when this movie was first announced, the Beatles did say that the original Let It Be film would be made available. So hopefully that is going to be included. Peter Jackson's Get Back movie deliberately shied away from using exact footage that was in Let It Be. He wanted that Let It Be film to still be relevant and not be superseded by what he created. That is very much a relevant movie, and I hope that that's included. I hope they keep the promise on that. And then that leads us to wonder, what might we get in terms of more anniversary releases? And like I say, this is where we're kind of in uncharted territory now, because we've obviously got to the end of the Beatles' career with the deluxe packages. It's now, what direction do they go in? Do they go Rubber Soul Revolver and work backwards to the start? Now, Giles Martin's already gone on record as saying that there are certain technical challenges to do with the original master tapes that makes it really difficult for them to do what they've done with some of the other albums. But he has also let slip that he's been working on various things that were Revolver related. So why would he have been doing that unless there was something in the works? So again, pure speculation. I think the smart money is on something Revolver related coming. But it may be that they go back to the start. It could be Please Please Me, and that they move through the years. And if there are some technical challenges around Rubber Soul Revolver, it buys them an extra sort of 3 years or so before they need to worry about doing that. So that's a possibility. The other thing that I wondered about was, because of the renewed interest in the Beatles following the Get Back movie, would it be a good time to spend this year, because they'll have got new fans on board, new fans might be interested in what else have they done during the career. Could this be the year where they do like a kind of a Past Masters re-release, but based on new remixes? So those two compilation albums, Past Masters 1 and 2, which were bringing together A-sides, B-sides, things that hadn't appeared on the main albums, it was bringing them all together. I wonder if this year might be actually a good year to do that. It buys them a little bit of extra time to overcome those technicalities on the likes of Revolver, but it also gives fans something sort of career encompassing start to finish, whilst there's that renewed interest in the band following the Get Back movie. So there's a few directions they could go, and honestly we really don't know at the moment, but I would think it would be one of those that I've just said there. So this is a possible timeline that I've put together of what we might see released. It is purely based on my speculation. Some of it may well turn out to be right. I think the Sometime in New York City one seems to be probably the one that I would pin my money on most has been right here. The rest of it is kind of what I think might make some logical sense for a 2022 set of releases. But as I'm sure you have gathered by now, if you've been watching my videos regularly, I will be covering all of this lot all of the way. So if you haven't done yet, please subscribe to my channel, and YouTube will let you know when I'm going to be covering all these different releases. So yeah, let me know what you think down in the comments. What would you like to see, or what do you think we will get this year? And I will see you again very soon. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.